kind of works well with the other question. Will our armor and robes appearance be customizable, or will there be sets, or how is that whole thing going to be working?
A mix thereof.
Yes.
There'll be sets, and there's also, with social points and some other systems, you'll be able to get some of those iconic outfits that might be earlier level. If you want to look like Obi-Wan Kenobi, you can look like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Or Boba Fett and what have you. And there's also the sets that drop in like the operations and stuff like that. And then there's the sort of mods you can put in those iconic sets from the operations or the PvP, etc. So there's a lot of different choices you have in the end game. You're not going to be seeing a lot of people looking the same. There's a lot of options.
Will you be able to level up your gear as well with you?
Yeah, so that's sort of what Gabe's talking about. Is what we did is there are certain sets of gear that are pretty hard to get, and those are the moddable gear. And the moddable gear does not have a level in and of itself. The mods bring the level. So if you want to be the, I'll just go ahead and throw this out here because I know it's one of the ones we talked about. Like, so for instance, under the social systems, if you want to be the person who worked hard enough that you got a full piece of sand person armor, and you're the guy who wants to be in the raid with fully modded out, you know, level 50 purple mods in your sand people gear, go for it. People are going to notice.
Hi. About endgame gear and character alignment, are each specific like light side, neutral side, and dark side gear going to have different stats, or are they going to be just the same?
You want to take it? It's cosmetic. It's cosmetic different things is what we're focusing on. We don't want to inhibit sort of your role-playing experience with gating content that you have to get statistically, you know, powerful.
Yeah,
So
we
it's
never
a lot
want
of
a moment
cosmetic
where you show up at level 50 and your guild's like, you did what?
Your light side.
And at the same time, we do realize that we want the light side, dark side system to have a meaning in the game. So there are going to be artifacts specific to each of those sides, the dark side, the light side, and the gray. And those artifacts will enable certain powers. So if you're light side, you're going to have access to certain powers from your artifacts that dark side doesn't. However, you know, we're making sure that we don't unbalance the game. And, you know, me and Gabe like to argue about that a lot, but we'll eventually get it all done by the time we ship, hopefully. Yeah, it'll be good.
So I had a question. Earlier we saw a video that talked about there being XP and loot from PvP, and I was excited about that because I like the idea of whether I'm questing or doing PvP, I can still be gaining XP and loot and progressing my character. Is that still sort of the direction you're going in?
So questing, PvP, space game. Right? Like when you're sitting around and whatever you decide that you want to do in tour today, we're going to give you XP for.
So it actually allows you to do, one of the things we wanted to do is give players the freedom to play the game the way they want to. It's actually a core tenet to, you know, it's a philosophy that BioWare's always had. We want to give players choice. So when you play the game, you can, for example, if you created a bounty hunter, you can play the game and just do the core class quests and the world quests and level all the way up to the top. Then you could like re-roll as a Sith warrior, and this time you could really focus on PvP, get experience points from that, or as Daniel talked about, do some of the space game. Or in fact, if you were a crafter, you could just stay at level 1 and craft the whole game like for 200 hours, which is Daniel's dream. I don't know why, but
let's be clear, because this will go all of the sites. You can't really do that at level 1. You kind of need a shift. But
all right, level 15.
Yes, but pretty low. The other thing is too, we're working in a lot more flashpoints, a lot more of that stuff. This has been Gabe's team's big push. So we're going to have flashpoints there for you pretty well all the way through the level pushes.
Yeah, level 8 up, you can do flashpoints if that's what you want to do. You can do war zones. You can do, I mean, yeah, you can do all the different options. You need fully geared out for war zones and PvP, etc. So
we actually have a whole quest line called the Heroic quest line, which is only doable in a group. And it has some of the best gear. It's kind of, they're almost like mini flashpoints, though some of them take place in public space, some of them are instanced, and there are literally hundreds of those in the game.
And those, in fact, just switched to dailies, correct?
Yes, they are repeatable.
Several of them are actually repeatable, so yeah. And the great part about that is if you're doing, you know, your class stuff is totally different between each class, but if you're on the same side, you're going to have seen some of the content before if you're going through it again. So you really can just decide, hey, this time I'm going to do the stuff that's different, and then I'm going to play more flashpoints, more PvP, or more raids, whatever.
All right, next
All
question.
right, cool. So that was actually a pretty good segue into my question. So nice job with that. So, the question I have is I'm really excited about the depth of story and like you were talking about the BioWare, kind of like the hallmark of BioWare games has always been being able to tell your story and make choices and decisions, etc. Right? And so my story would be different than almost everybody else's story here, right? Et cetera, right? So how do you manage that, right? Moving forward as you get progressively, further along in the game, because every decision is a branch, right? And then that decision branches, and then that decision branches, and then by the time I get to level 50, my story is completely different, and now I've got to like group up with people to do, like endgame content. And just beyond that too, I mean, like 3-4 years down the line, I've got these like exponential branches that are out there. So how do you guys manage that from a functional standpoint?
So what we were talking about is a thing that we call global variables, and the programmers love us. Because the writing team says, hey, you know that thing you did on the origin world? We need to remember that. And we need to remember that for a few hundred hours, because that's going to come bite you in the ass later. Honestly, for us, it's just about really good documentation. It's about knowing which things are important to remember. A lot of the stuff and the choices you make, just like choices you might make in relationships or life or whatever, are important for a little while. How you dealt with that NPC is important for the other times you're going to deal with them. After that, we can actually drop that variable. There are some variables that are going to be important forever, and we're going to carry those around. So it's a very judicious use of making sure we know which things we have to carry around as, let's just say, your player's emotional baggage. That, and as we're going into future territory, we're already like, whoa, some of these characters have a lot of baggage. And which ones we can use as temporaries. I don't think we would have ever been able to do this in this kind of environment had we not had the experience with things like Dragon Age and Mass Effect and these very complex RPGs that are entirely driven this way.
So, sorry guys, we unfortunately are almost out of time, and I know there's long lines out there, so we're going to take one more question, and then I encourage you, please come see us at the booth. Like, we'll be back at the booth after this, and we're happy to talk to folks. That's why we're here. So, one last question. Again, sorry about that.
So, in the MMO world, we've seen times to max level from anywhere from 3 days to like 100 days. Do you guys have a goal that you're trying to shoot for as an average amount of time it takes someone to level in terms of playtime?
Yeah, we do have a goal. We set that very early on in the start of game design. However, the goal isn't set in stone. One of our philosophies is we want to make sure that the game is fun from beginning to end. That we never introduce a grind just to force you to play an extra 50 hours. That's been very much a core of the design philosophy. So we've had a goal. We actually went over it for a little while, but then we made some adjustments to make the game a little bit smoother, a little bit more fun. That actually lowered it down, and we're still looking at it right now. We adjust things such as XP curves, itemization, and we just want to make sure that you never get bored while you're questing.
And no, we're never actually going to tell you what that goal is, because all that'll be is a giant challenge to some guild.
Cool. Well, thank you very much to our panel up here.